Today we're presenting the third and great luthier, Aaron Ringo. Aaron Ringo is one of the best luthiers in the area. His guitars are completely amazing. I had in the past people that come with me and they say, I just bought this guitar, what do you think about it? And as soon as I see the Rosette and I see the build, I know it's an Aaron Ringo. And I often reply to them, why are you even asking me what do I think about your guitar? Your guitar is amazing. It's an Aaron Ringo guitar. You cannot expect anything bad. The sound is just beautiful. The guitars are powerful and loud. So I'm very, very happy that Aaron accepted to be part of this presentation, because everything he's gonna say is gonna help all of us as players and as guitar enthusiasts. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Abraham. And it's wonderful to be here and part of this series that you've created. And I'm just happy to be a part of the brand new Texas Guitar Society. And I can't wait to see what you guys are doing more after this. I've enjoyed every presentation I've watched so far. So congrats to everybody that's done one so far.
Thank you so much.
All right. So yeah, I just created a presentation for you guys today, and it's quite a long one, so we're going to try to go through stuff a little fast. And if you do have a quick question, feel free to ask if it's during the slideshow, because it's kind of hard to remember. I've got so many slides, but try to save most of them for the end if you'd like, and we can get through this in a relatively timely fashion. Okay. So a lot of these slides in the slideshow are going to be from my old shop and some in the new shop. So I used to be in a one-car garage. It's how most luthiers start. And I finally got to upgrade a couple of years ago to a really nice fancy dream shop that I've always wanted to do. So this was kind of the construction of the new shop. It was quite a project. We designed it ourselves with a lot of things in mind. One of the things I had in my head at the time was I really wanted to have a moisture control environment, which is super important for a luthier to have, to control the woods in the shop that he stores and the guitars. Has some very precious guitars that hang around and that come into the shop for repair sometimes. So that's pretty important. So it was spray foamed insulation, which is quite a good moisture barrier to have. In my one-car garage, I had a big humidifier, and I would fill it up maybe sometimes twice a day. That's how bad it was in that shop, just to keep it around 45% humidity. And this one, I have the same humidifier. It's twice as much square feet, and I fill it up maybe once a week if I'm lucky. So it's just so amazing to have this new shop. And this is kind of an inside pano view of the downstairs of the shop. So this is where all the dust happens. The wood is cut, and the great smells are created. So I've got a lot of some machinery around here, band saws, table saw, scroll saws, and obviously some woodworking benches. And I inherited some of these tools from my grandpa, which was a woodworker. So definitely in the family blood a little bit. Yeah. Can you guys see the slideshow pretty good? Good. All right.
I can't see anything.
You can't see anything?
No, Aaron, but that's okay. Go ahead. I'm just staring at a black phone.
Huh. That may be on your end.
I'm sure it's pilot error.
Yeah, it could be. So yeah, this is kind of the shop when it got finished. So that was a great day to take a picture. And you've got to have, obviously, I think Gabriel has a shop dog. Who doesn't have a shop dog? I have a shop dog, so pretty important to have one. And yeah, obviously she works well with me in the shop. So one of the things I'd like to do in the shop, and the new one especially, was my dream was to have events, not just woodworking things, but master classes and concerts. And my dream came true. Like, we've had some amazing events here before the pandemic happened, obviously, and I do miss doing that and can't wait to resume. But we've had Adam Holzman come by and do a master class, and just invite some of the local students to be lucky enough to come by and take from him. Here's a picture of Dan. I think this is his first lesson with Adam, which is pretty cool to watch. And concerts have happened there. So Jesus Serrano, one of my great friends who I built a guitar for, has played here. It was an honor to have him. He's such a virtuoso guitar player. Okay, so we're going to get into some woods here finally, which is the fun part. Basically spruce top, cedar top. I mean, what other choices do you need, right? So yeah, there's some differences there. And that's not only the choices we have. You can get into many different types of spruces, Carpathian spruces, Engelmann spruces, which is probably what you see right there on the left. And then Western red cedar. And these are mostly grown out in the Canadian regions, west coast of America. Spruces can come from other parts of the world, alpine spruce and everything like that. And you got other woods like Portofino cedar that you can choose from. But one of the things great about the double tops is you can actually combine both of these woods and get somewhere in between a sound that you wouldn't normally get in a solid top guitar. So you always have to choose between a solid top guitar. So I obviously store my wood in my shop, and it has to be stored correctly, obviously, and keep it at a really good moisture content. Around 45% to 50 is about normal for most wood luthier shops. And so the back and sides are obviously the exotic woods I use. This is a set of African blackwood, and it's one of my favorite woods to use it's a pretty dense wood. And it just provides a really great sound with the tops that I make with the double tops. But yeah, you get a lot of other exotic woods, ziricotes, Brazilian rosewood, obviously, Indian rosewoods. And so kind of when I get into a build, doesn't matter if it's a commission or something I'm just going to build for myself to show, I try to visualize the build before I build it a little bit. It's kind of like looking at that piece of rock before you start chipping out and making that sculpture. You've got to, as an artist, you do have to kind of come up with the visual effects of it. So a lot of times I'll lay out a lot of things and think about how I want to put it together. So here's two guitars kind of laid out that I built before. And kind of during the process of the guitar from beginning to end, I do a lot of testing and data. And that kind of helps me as a luthier to be more consistent as a builder rather than just relying on my ears. I like to have a lot of data to look at. And I use a speaker generator and deflection and stiffness and testing. And it's taken years to really understand that and collect a lot of data, but it's really paid off to produce some really fine guitars lately. So, yeah. And this is kind of another, sorry. Somebody have a question?
No, I think it was just a little bit of noise.
Okay. So yeah, this is another part of the testing right here that I'll do when I'm tuning a top. And so we'll get a little bit into that a little later. So usually one of the first things I start making when I start doing a guitar is the laminated linings, which go on the inside of the sides. So these are made out of Spanish cedar, and usually about 4 pieces that are laminated together into shapes. And these molds kind of help create the shape. And this is going to be the finished result right here. I like lamination just as a builder. It's wonderful. It takes stress out of the guitar. When you bind the side and put it in the mold. So this is one of my molds that I use for the classical, and there's a lot of things built into this mold to help with the setup of the guitar, and just it's like one big tool basically. Just think of it like that. And so when I bend the side normally, it wants to spring back. It's just always wants to, no matter what. So I laminate the sides in these molds, and you'll see right here. So this is like a laminated 3-ply side. So you either have Indian rosewood, whatever exotic wood you're using, and inside the guitar will be Paduke, or I've used flame mahogany, which is probably what this is. And then the Spanish cedar linings are going in there. So this is side, it is stiff, it is set, it's not going to move. And it just takes a little bit of stress out of that guitar. So I think it helps prevent cracks along this journey and through the life of the musician. And so I do like work on a lot of detail work in between this. So I'm usually putting in a little wheat motif strip here. And this is kind of the rear end of the guitar. So kind of rat out the channel or chisel it out by hand. I do a lot of hand work still, even though I use some power tools and stuff. It's a lot of hand tools. That's kind of what the strip will look like at the end. And so when we started getting into the double top area, when I was building solid tops, it was a lot easier. All you have to do is thickness the top to its right thickness and brace it. With double tops, gets a little bit more complicated because you're actually gluing two tops together, and in between that is a material called Nomex. And so what I do to rat out the channel that the Nomex puts in, I built this mold. And this is kind of the latest mold I use. That was the first one, was the beginning mold I used. So this is the one I currently use to rat out the channels. So I use this router, which is like a handheld router. And you can kind of see how I do it here. This is quite a dusty operation, but we're really routing out these channels, and it makes these tops really thin in places. So it's veneer thin, believe it or not. So this is me chiseling out the Nomex to be glued into the top. So Nomex is actually a honeycomb Kevlar material. It's made by a DuPont kind of aeronautics industry. If you've heard of Wagner or Dahmen, were the guys that created the double tops and kind of came up with this, building construction method to put together these tops. And I still love, there's a lot of people doing balsa wood tops, and I may play around with that someday, but I really love the sound that I'm getting from this Nomex top, and I have my own design for it. And there's probably 1,000 ways you can do a double top, but just kind of had a different philosophy behind it than most builders out there. And I did have to create a vacuum press to actually glue all this together. So it was a bit of an investment and learning curve, but nothing I couldn't handle. And this thing's pretty amazing. I think if I could manage to put a cup of water in the vacuum, it would boil at room temperature. That's how strong this vacuum is. It's sometimes I can be a little, tool time tailor at the shop, a little overkill. So, so this is the double top Nomex being glued in it's like a big Ziploc bag, and the vacuum press sucking all the air out. So you get a real even pressure with a vacuum press. That's me before long hair. So here's the Nomex that is glued in the top. And then once I get it glued in, I kind of sand it even with the top, or level with the top, and kind of adjust my thicknesses to the desire that I want for that guitar. And then the other top is added on top of that. So, and then that's how you make a double top. So the next slide here, you will see how thin these woods are. It's pretty thin, but what's amazing about the double top and the philosophy behind it is you want to make it stiff and light. And you can kind of see how thin they are when they're glued up. You can still see light through it. But when I was building solid top guitars, I kept a lot of data on the sound and the stiffness of the tops. And what I learned when I started doing double tops is the range of tuning the tops becomes much bigger. I couldn't reach these ranges before in solid tops. And so I could get darker sounds but still keep bright sounds when I was trying to get those darker sounds. So it's quite an interesting evolution to construct a guitar this way. So after that, I basically started doing a lot of rosette details and start preparing for this. So I can talk about this part for hours, so I'm gonna have to go a little fast. So if you ever visit the shop, I'll dive into this a little bit more, okay? But this is just, this is called a wheat stick, and a lot of wood shavings. Looks really cool. This is basically the wheat motif that I'm building out of lots of veneers that I've created in a sequence and pattern that I like. And I've adjusted this over the years to fit the rosette design that I like. And so you cut these into different angles, re-glue them back together. This is probably me gluing up some bindings or just some veneers for the purfling details. And then you cut the strip into even thinner strips. And then you cut those strips into thinner strips, bookmash them together, put a veneer in between, and you've got your wheat bow stick. So there's some bindings and probably some purflings right there. And so let's get into like the actual rosette design here. And so I like a lot of burls, pick a lot of different woods. I've collected a lot of different woods over the years. I'm really picky about this wood that I'll put inside the guitar and start decorating around the edges. So I route out the channels with a Dremel router. And each one's planed down and then routed out again. And then I've kind of figured out a way to actually bend these wheat motifs inside the channels myself. And then everything's kind of planed down level to the rosette. And then some more purfling lines put in, and then you've got pretty much your finished rosette there. And you can see here how there's so many different colorings you can put in, many different burls. Sometimes I do more mosaic rosettes, but I like a lot of natural wood colors. It's already beautiful, so why not use it? And you can see the maple burl right there. I think that's Randall's guitar. That was a beautiful rosette. And then also the Aztec rosette. So me and Jesus Serrano came up with this design ourselves, and he has a lot of history and obviously from Mexico, and he wanted the Aztec sun and moon pyramids. I mean, it has a lot of meaning to him in his life, and so we came up with this, and I wanted to get a completely different effect than I've ever had in guitar. So I wanted to get this kind of 3D effect of pyramids. So I ended up coming up with this ourselves. We kind of just worked on some of the details together. It just came out great. I've never seen a rosette quite like this before, and he loved it. So worked out fantastic for everybody. So after the rosette's installed, we started bracing the guitar, and I still use a fan bracing pattern, which is a very traditional bracing pattern. It's kind of a mixture between the Hauser, I'd say a little of the Remilios, and somewhere I'm in there too. So, but basically it's evolved a little bit over the years, but I still like a traditional fan brace, because when I went to the double top, I really wanted to just understand what the double top was doing and with a traditional sound. I did not want to lose a traditional sound, because I have played several double tops out there that you just don't hear that as much. And luckily, a lot of the players that have played my guitars have said they still sound traditional, but I just wanted that extra dynamic range that you get out of a double top. And so this is me carving some braces. And this is kind of how you tune the guitar at this point. You can do some with thicknesses of the top, but after you get to a certain point, you have to go to the braces, and basically the more mass you put on the guitar, it changes the sound. You take off some mass, it changes, it lowers the frequency. So. And once the top gets on the sides, it gets really exciting, because you can kind of tap on that top and actually start hearing that guitar sing. It hasn't been closed yet, so there's not much sustain or anything going on there yet, but you can really hear the bell tones. It sounds like a big drum, open drum at this point. I start getting pretty excited about what the guitar is going to sound like when I get it strung up. I've also built some steel string guitars. So this is a whole different kind of bracing system. You've probably seen this in a lot of steel strings. It's called the X-brace system. So this is actually a double top too. You can imagine how loud this thing was when I got it done. But yeah, it's just a completely different monster to compared to classicals to brace. Steel strings pull a lot more tension on the top compared to nylon strings. So back into that testing I was doing. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the frequency generator, and I can get at certain frequencies that top gets excited. And what you're seeing around there is actually tea leaves we sprinkle around, and these patterns happen naturally. And you can do this in any kind of surface. You can find these kind of different kind of frequencies and patterns. But it's wonderful to do this for the guitars because it allows me to keep that data and shows me what exact frequency that top's tuned to. Think of the guitar as a speaker box. So there's a resonant frequency inside the speaker box, and you can even get the back frequency. And that's 3 different frequencies going on there. So you can really change that a lot and get different sounds, but it's great to keep data. And especially when somebody plays one of my guitars, it's out of town, goes, oh, I really liked, hey, this guitar, can you make my guitar sound like that? And I can get really close. I mean, the woods are all different, but I can get within 5 hertz of his guitar because I've kept that data. And it's just so nice to have that consistency these days. So here's just another pretty picture before I close up the box. Kind of see the braces through there. And yes, every one of my guitars, I do write something inside. Don't ask me if you're on here what I wrote in yours, because probably can't remember. You'll have to dig a mirror out or your phone and figure it out yourself, but everybody has a special message in their guitar. So the back, we can't forget about the back. So I'm gluing up the back here, usually back strips. I like to use a lot of natural woods too. So a lot of the woods will have sapwood. If it's so pretty, why not just keep it? I love the beauty of woods. And sometimes I love picking out woods with really interesting figures. So I try to keep a lot of my wood straight grain. It's just a more stable way to less chance of guitars cracking. I love the super figured. I think I built like one guitar early in my career. It was super figured, and it cracked a little bit. It was worth it, but it did crack a little bit. But I learned like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna stay with the straight grain stuff. People are gonna start hating me if I do that too much. So, but these are mostly, I've never really had any cracks happen in guitars. Pretty rare these days. So. And then the back braces are put on. And this is a Spanish cedar for the back braces. It's pretty normal to use for classicals and even steel strings. And this is actually a go bar deck system. So these are carbon fiber rods, and it just puts a lot of even pressure on the backs. And the backs are actually radius some. So a radius actually helps with the stiffness and the stability of the back and the top and everything. So, but this is about a 15-foot radius we're using here. And then in the sides, before we put the back on, these are actually notched out for those braces to be put in. It has to be a perfect fit. And then we carve the braces down, and kind of, you can tune this just like a top. It's really that simple. So you have to be really mindful of your stiffness and everything and thicknesses of your backs. And then the back braces get a nice coat of shellac, which helps with moisture. And I'm about to put it back on here. This is a Zaracote back. Lots of clamping going on here. No, you can't have too many clamps in a wood shop. This is also usually where you can kind of set your neck angle the last time. And I use a bolt-on system in my guitars, and so I can adjust it a little bit along the way, but it's always nice to nail it right here. And so once I get the back on, I start working on more detail work. So a lot of the binding material that I just made in that picture a while ago is actually about to be installed here. So these are the channels I route out. I kind of use a staircase method. A lot of hand work here, a lot of chisel work. This is where we create the miterings for the guitars, those little details that you see all over your guitar. This is a lot of very minor work, so very small work. Kind of checking my miterings. You want to make sure everything fits in, because you've got about 15 minutes to get it all glued in. And so you can see I'm prepping a lot of tape here. I've got my rubber bands over there. You want to make sure everything's set to go. And then 15 minutes later, that happens. So it's a lot of stuff going on there. Some luthiers use string. Everybody's just got a different way to do this, whatever they feel comfortable with, really. I kind of like this method. I've always had really tight bindings with this. So it's like, yeah, I did 3 in one day that day. It was a long day. And then so after the bindings are set in, we usually plane them level with the guitar, and the whole guitar kind of gets a nice sanding. And that's pretty much what it looks like after everything's installed and then scraped down to level with the woods and sides and backs and everything. So love that look with that. Randall go watch because you can see his guitar right now. It's too bad he can't see it. Actually going to be the heel block, and this is kind of catching you up to the tenon that I use inside the guitar. And I do put a carbon fiber rod inside the necks for stability. I don't really want a neck to warp or go haywire on the players, so that actually helps a lot. And I think it does help with some sustain in the guitar. It's just a little bit more stiff. Spanish cedar is a pretty soft wood. It's wonderful to carve, but I think it helps to have some stability in the wood. So you can see this carbon fiber rod I use. Channels routed out and it's inlaid inside. Sometimes I will put 2 in there. It just depends on the neck and how stable it is. And then some wood's back inlaid on it. Everybody still see this? Good to go. All right. And then the head plate is glued on, and I like to use a head plate with some veneers. It also matches the color scheme of the guitar, but it also serves as another purpose is to stiffen up the headstock, so it will be very stable. It's another nice lamination. So pretty much to this stage, I'm about ready to carve some necks. And that's probably one of my favorite jobs as a guitar builder because it's a lot of hand work, which I like. You get to carve out the headstock here. There's only a few places that luthiers kind of have their signature, and Rosette's one, headstock's another. And those are 2 very hard things to distinguish yourself in the guitar world. And mine has definitely had an evolutionary change through the years of my creations, and the latest one pretty much uses these days. So it's, guys have definitely seen these before, I'm sure. And yeah, this is kind of what the latest and greatest looks like to pretty much today. So, and the tuners also get in there. Those are, you know, drilled out, routed out. I actually hand carved the headstock pretty much all by hand myself, and then the tuners are fit in there just to be sure everything fits great before we get to finishing stages and final sanding. I used to put some actually head plates on the back on some guitars. I don't know if anybody's ever seen those, but and I had some really fun show-off joints, which is called a V joint, which is a little hard to do, but I had to do it a few times just to see how I could do it. So here's carving the necks, and a lot of rasps and spoke shaves, planers, sandpaper, drills, whatever you can do to remove a lot of wood fast and create the shape that you like on a neck. And that is a lot of art there. I mean, I like a C shape, and yeah, thickness is everything. A lot of people, and I have worked with a lot of customers to figure out what I've got kind of an average one I use these days. I work with Adam Holzman. He kind of scrutinized my necks for a long time, and he finally found one that he liked. So I was like, I finally did something good. But you know, everybody's hands are different, so you really do have to customize it to their needs. There's not one perfect neck for everybody. It has to do with the width of the neck. It has to do with so many variations there. And so yeah, when somebody commissions a guitar, I look at their hands, I watch them play, I have them tell them try many guitars. If they have a guitar neck thickness they like, give me those measurements. I can mimic that. So, and shape and everything. Dan Kaiser wanted me to change his, he got 2 guitars from me. And the second one, we did a lot of changes to his neck because he really wanted just a whole different philosophy after playing for a while in his first one. And so we changed a lot of stuff. So a lot more carving here. So that's getting to pretty close to final thickness there. And like I said, I use a bolt-on neck, so my necks are completely removable. I repair a lot of instruments, and it's one thing I don't like to do is neck resets. It's basically like kind of like taking a transmission out of a car. It's not fun for anybody. It's expensive, and I mean, if you have to do it, you got to do it. But I never wanted to do that on my guitars, so they're easy to adjust things. If something were to happen, you could just build them a new neck, super easy. And so there's the bolts I use. It also helps me provide a feature which I really like in a guitar, which is the raised neck, which was one of the best features I think that we come up with in guitar. It's actually been developed in many other instruments a long time ago, but Tom Humphrey was one of the ones that made it famous. So it kind of allows you to play up in the higher register a lot easier. And I provide a little radius in my fretboard for most people that want one. It's a standard feature in my guitars, but it's about 20-foot radius. Just helps with bar chords. It makes the guitar a little more ergonomical to play. And so that's a picture of the raised neck after it's done. That mass under that fretboard also helps with the sustain in those higher registers. That's another thing I really noticed when I started doing raised necks. This is a V-joint in the headstock. And that was probably one of the hardest ones I ever did. That was a very, very tight V-joint. I never did that again. So fretboards, yeah, I used to do this by hand. I kind of have a new system these days in the new shop. It's a table saw version of this, and it's a little more accurate and a little less time consuming, but I've definitely done my share of hand sawing fret slots, probably at least 25 guitars, so that's enough. Fretboard is glued on very carefully, and we start doing some frets. So this is actually an interesting picture because a lot of luthiers skip this step when they're putting in frets, but this is a V file, and you actually put this in the slots. And so if you ever want a fret job again, this makes it so much easier to do that. So when you, ebony is actually quite a delicate wood that will chip and stuff when you're ripping these frets out, and this actually helps eliminate that. So I can tell when a guitar has had this, been done, if the luthier did a good job or not. And this is hammering in the frets. We're gonna go fast here because I actually have a video of me doing this. This is every player kind of has their own dots they like to use. So I always ask, where do you want your dots on the fretboard? So you have point of reference, playing. So that's just customized to the player's needs. File down, frets are leveled. The fretboard gets a nice coat of boiled linseed oil, which kind of seals the fretboard and helps with wear and tear from oil and a lot of playing. You can kind of see the radius in this fretboard here. So it's just very slight. Okay, so here's the video. So yeah, I'm really fast at fretting, so I hope you guys like that. So I hope that's as good on the Zoom as it is on my screen, because yeah, that's pretty funny. So at this stage, I'm getting really excited. I'm about to the finishing stage, which is pretty much halfway done in the building phase, as they say. So yeah, it's a lot of work involved, but we're not quite there yet. But it's looking really good at this point. So I start making the bridge, which was one of the last things I do in woodworking at this for the guitar building process. I use a 12-hole tie block system, and this is for a few reasons. I like the way it ties. I like the way the angle of the strings is a lot better than a 6-hole. And I have quite a unique way. So the treble strings are kind of facing the opposite as the bass strings, and there's no strings that kind of end up at the end. It also kind of helps pull torque on the bridge a little more even. And so this is a bridge being glued on the top. And I used to use this method, which is just totally fine. But I noticed it started putting a little more tension in the top than I wanted. You can see how that top is actually quite bowing there up. And I was a little worried I may crack a top one of these days. So I actually changed my method. You also have to put in a caul to clamp it. And it's a lot of pressure there. So you have to make a caul and notch it out for each brace so you don't damage the top. But I went to this method, which is, since I have a vacuum press, it's a vacuum bridge clamp, and it basically sucks the bridge down on top. It doesn't stress out that top anymore. I don't worry about it. I can just turn my vacuum on and leave and just wait till it's done, clean up the glue job, and yeah, that's the result afterwards. So I use a Brazilian rosewood for bridges. It's just a wonderful wood to use for bridges. The weight comes out right. I kind of shoot for a 15 to 20 gram weight on the bridge, somewhere in between there, just depending on how the top tuned and everything, because this is kind of the last way you can kind of change the sound of the guitar by the weight of the bridge. And to really understand the top, I did a lot of deflection testing in the beginning of learning how to build guitars, and I wanted to understand what the weak points were in the top and the strong points. And so, does anybody know where the weakest parts are on the top? Abraham, anybody?
I do not know. I don't know if anybody else knows.
So what I learned is you can kind of guess, because you've probably seen some cracks happen in guitars. That's kind of where those weak spots are. So yeah, so on the wings of the bridge, that happens a lot. That's a pretty weak area on the top. So when I built my double tops, I kind of changed that a little bit to make those areas a little stronger. And then actually another really weak point is by the neck, where the neck joint is, especially if it's glued in. A lot of cracks happen right there, and obviously around the sound hole, because there's a big hole there. So we start the French polish stages. So every porous wood has to be filled before we actually start the French polishing, putting shellac on the guitars. And so this is kind of what we do. And it's a lot of rubbing of pumice and shellac. You put a couple of coats of shellac on there and then just kind of rub it into those little pores. It's pretty tedious work and does wear out your hands. So this is kind of just putting some shellac in the guitars. Sometimes I recruit my family to help me if they're in the mood. So this is probably my dad doing something for me. And I use Everclear to actually French polish. It's not just a drink. It's a great alcohol for shellac. You dissolve the shellac in there, and I like to use it mainly because it's less. It's better for you than denatured alcohol, because it's got a lot of bad additives. You have to wear masks, but you don't have to wear a mask with this. So you just have to be careful not to drink too much. So this is kind of where you're starting to do coats on the guitar. It starts getting shiny. Thousands and thousands of coats go on each guitar. It takes a good 2 weeks to really put enough coats on the guitar where I'm beginning to be happy with it, and then another week to cure. and it just looks better and better. I mean, it kind of gets addicting to just see that shine start appearing. You just want to go back to it and just keep doing it until it just gets better and better. You start seeing your reflection. That's always a good sign. It's a Macassar ebony back. It's beautiful wood to use, kind of in the ebony family. It's a wonderful tone wood. Coca-Cola, built a lot of those in the past. And then the label gets put in the guitar. So this was the Aztec label. It's one of the last things I'll do before I string it up. Sign it, date it, put a number on it, and I just completed number 50 last year, so it's really coming along, these numbers. Remember, 10 was hard to get to. And then string it up and play it, and there's nothing like that day, just hearing the guitar sound that first day. And also the best day is delivering the guitar to somebody that has been waiting probably over a year for a guitar, so that is just a wonderful day for them and us. And this is Jesus picking up his Aztec. We had such a fun weekend that weekend. And then we just got some pictures of just some finished guitars here for you guys. There's Randall's guitar. He ordered it's a maple guitar with a bear claw spruce top. Did a lot of custom stuff for him he wanted. Kind of came up with these woods ourselves. And I'd always told him I wanted to build a maple because it's got some sweet sounds out of that wood before. It's a beautiful tone wood to use. There's the Aztec. I called this one the Rattlesnake Guitar because that rosette kind of looked like a diamondback rattlesnake. And this guitar actually went all the way to China, which is really cool. So really a lot of fun to see where these guitars go sometimes. That's actually Dan Kaiser's old guitar before he upgraded to spruce. It's Randall's back. And then tuners, I get so lucky sometimes on customers that sometimes they have a little extra money and they want to, I want to go out on these tuners. I'm like, all right, I know a guy. I use Alessi tuners, so they're made in Italy, and he makes some of the finest tuners I've ever seen. And so, yeah, it's just beautiful stuff sometimes. And I'd really try to match that to the theme and make it really unique for the customer. I really love the gear ratio on these. They're just fun to tune. You don't have to sit there and turn them like some tuners. You can just, you're there, you know. It's just wonderful. And they're super smooth. They've got these bearings. It's great. And Jesus wanted to use a wood from Mexico on the Aztec. So that's a Zuricote, which is from Mexico. So he wanted to use some woods from there. And I recommended this one for him and the sound that he wanted to get. And we picked out these really special sets for these models, for the Aztec model, because I'm only building a certain amount of those. And so they're really unique Zuricote sets, as you can see there. It's just beautiful. We picked out a specific set of tuners for him as well, and they're really unique to that model. So I don't know how much time we have left. About 10 minutes or so, and then some questions. So yeah, if you guys want to talk about anything at this point, I can go over some maintenance. So I was going to leave it to you guys. And
awesome. Thank you so much for that wonderful and very interesting process of the building. I never seen two tops put together with Nomex, and that was one of the things that I wanted to say, that you are being very brave at giving us your bracing and how you glue the tops together and everything, because I know that there are many luthiers that they are scared that people are going to steal their secrets and things like that. But I really appreciate that you gave us a glance to the top, a glance to the bracing, a glance of the Nomec and how you put it together on the guitar. That is very, 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 very cool to see. And I really appreciate that you're not afraid of giving out your secrets.
No, I think there's no way somebody could build a guitar like me. It's like art. I can't play guitar like you. You play guitar like you. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. And actually, the builder world is not really like that. There are some luthiers that are very secretive, but I have not learned that. Most of them are very giving. I mean, I'm part of a luthier club in North Texas called Luthiers Interactive North Texas, and they have taught me so much and just given so much. I mean, this is what we do. We have to share. That's how the entire building world has evolved. Is most builders tell you stuff, and you shouldn't be scared to share stuff because, yeah, that's how you get better. So
yeah, that's beautiful.
And I always love to share as well. So.
And it was very interesting to see the bars that you put it on the neck to give reinforcement. That was very interesting. I didn't know that your guitars had that for reinforcement, and it's very, very interesting. So I wanted to ask you a question. I heard that there is, for example, the Granada School of Luthering and then the Madrid School of Luthering. Do you think that you are creating this new Texas School of Luthering, or you're working with the Texas School of Building Luthering?
You know, that's a good question. I've put a lot of different features in my guitars, and I am actually really self-taught. So it is a different way. I do have a different philosophy than a lot of builders, and I've taken a lot of things from other builders and I've thrown my own ideas in there, and just I've really tried to go for a sound I like and try to be unique and with the art of it. And so, yeah, it's not easy to do those things, but who knows where that will go, and hopefully some people love it and take it and run with it and maybe make something even better. I mean, I'd be happy with that. So and yeah, I've actually thought about maybe teaching someday. I'm not really quite ready for that, but it's definitely one of the things I thought maybe the future of the shop could be used for. But I definitely wanted to get quite a few years under my belt to build and eventually maybe share that knowledge with some people. So
that is awesome. We have a question from Eliza, and she says, since this light, are the Ergo Play suction cups safe for your guitars?
Yeah, that's a good question. Any suction cup is pretty much bad for French polish, but there are things you can do to help protect your guitar. I would just recommend go to Strings by Mail and ask the guys up there. They're very knowledgeable about that, on what to use that's safe for the guitar. Either a cling-on protection probably would work, or maybe something more permanent if you're willing to not change your support lifestyle for a while. But yeah, I use the Barnett support, so it's a magnetic support in my Aztec, and it doesn't scar it, mar it, or anything. But everybody's got their own way of performing, and you should just kind of find something that does work for you. But yeah, just try to protect it as much as you can, because French polish, it will start taking that finish off. And Adam Holzman, he actually doesn't like to put protection on, so he'll just bring his guitars over to me and get them French polished every once in a while. So it's whatever you like to do. That's the nice thing about French polish, is it takes forever to put the finish on, but it's super easy to repair, and it does get beat up after a while, but it's just, you can repair it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if you're scared about that, if you want your guitar to look good, protect it.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. Do we have any other questions on the chat? And you guys are welcome to unmute yourselves. We have some questions or some tips here on the screen that maybe you changed them.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to do that.
That people maybe want to ask guitar maintenance and repairs, use of microfiber cloth and apply wax direct on the grain. Is that for removing scratchers?
Yeah, so this is basically a picture of the wax I use for my guitars. It's called the original beeswax. I've told a lot of my customers, just get this for your guitar. Use a microfiber cloth to wipe it. You go with the grain. I love this wax because it doesn't build up. You can put it on whenever you want. It cleans the guitar, and it just basically makes the finish last a whole lot longer, especially if you sweat when you perform. Those kinds of things happen. This is the wax to get. Yeah, I mean, obviously change your strings often. Try to keep your instrument at 40-45% humidity. That will help with cracking and everything, and keep it in its case. I think I've heard some of the other luthiers and repair guys in the and the other presentations talk about that as well. Be careful of string whips. You can actually get some protection and put it behind I actually put these on my guitars now when they're brand new. I just give it to the customers, but I use a Klingon protection just under the strings and behind the tie block, just in case something happens. And, you want to, if you don't know how to tie your strings correctly, please ask your professor, your teacher. You don't want a string whip. It's not fun. Those are hard to repair. It's basically a scar for life on a guitar. What do you do if a crack happens in a guitar? Depends on where it happens. In the top, take the strings tension off immediately. That's what I would recommend. Get it to your local repair person or luthier and get it checked out. Guitar cracks in the back are not as bad to worry about, but definitely still need to get it checked out. And there's a lot of difference between new guitars and aged guitars with restoration. And so if you're interested in getting something like that done, I would just ask the repair person as well.
We have another question on the chat, but they are saying we don't want to offend the luthier. We're just very curious on this. Gluing the bridge with the vacuum doesn't compromise the glue on the double top?
Do you mean the glue that's inside the double top?
Yeah, so it doesn't compromise the glue on the...
So the glue I use inside the double top is actually a polyurethane glue. So it's kind of a little foamy glue and it's all measured out. So I don't put too much glue in there. It's just the right amount, but it's a really strong glue and it does not change. I've never had it happen to mine. You don't want to put too much vacuum pressure on those bridges. And I use hide glue for my bridges. So if I do have to remove them, they're easy, but hide glue is a different kind of glue than any other one. It's like a chemical bond. So if you use Tite Bond or something, there's always a pretty good amount of glue between the joints. But hide glue is actually about as close wood to wood joint as you can get. So it's one of the wonderful things about that. And, hope that answers that question.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think that's perfect. I have a question about Nomex. What is it about Nomex that is such a good material for construction?
Well, I think it has to do with just the structure that they created. Obviously, honeycomb is one of the strongest structures out there. I mean, nature has made it. It's been tested. It's very, very strong. It's also fire retardant. So, I mean, if your guitar does burn up, that'll be the only thing left plus the tuners. So there's that, But no, it's a lightweight material that's very strong to use. And if you're trying to make something light and stiff, that's great. I mean, I can't think of anything better than that. So.
Yeah, beautiful. Any other questions in the chat? I don't see anything. If anybody wants to mute yourself and ask a question.
Here's some contact information as well. So I think I know most of you guys, but you can contact me at woodringguitars.com. It's got an email link on there, or just give me a call on my cell phone if you'd like. I'd love to talk whenever you guys want. So
thank you so much for doing this presentation and for sharing your building process with the community. It is so interesting for me personally to see how different everybody has in their process and in their artistry. And it's just so beautiful. And I would love to come and visit your shop when things get a little bit better. But thank you so much for sharing this with us, Aaron. I also want to address that you decided to donate the little fee that we normally give to the guests, which means thank you so much, because we can pay a little bit more to the musicians, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. We have another a few more questions. Have you ever tried something with a non-hexagonal shape like triangles?
In the double tops, or?
That's all it says, but maybe you want to clarify your question.
I was may clarify that, but
all right. In the meantime, we have another question.
Sure.
And it says, what do you recommend for a guitar that has dried out? Example, frets extending out of the board.
Yeah, I've seen guitars through that. I actually had a customer have the opposite problem. He had his guitar humidified so much where the fret ends were inside the fretboard by about 2 or 3 millimeters, which was crazy to me to see that. In that kind of situation, you need to humidify the guitar very slowly. You don't want to shock an instrument. That's when you get cracks happen. If you do a shock an instrument with complete fast humidity change or even a temperature change, it can cause cracking, but wouldn't worry about it too much. Just slowly increase the humidity level until you get it to about 45% or so.
Thank you. Here's the question again. Have you ever tried something with a non-hexagonal shape like triangles? And then Mr. Ryan says, I was referring to the geometry of the inner material between the double top.
Okay, so he was referring to double top. No, I've only used, you can actually get the Nomex in a lot of different cell structures, but I've never tried anything other than that myself, no. You know, like I said, a lot of people do balsa wood double tops, which is just a completely different way of constructing the double top, and they have a different sound and everything, I would say, but yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with double tops. I've always slowly changed things so I can keep track of what's going on in the guitars and understand it. But yeah, I mean, I'm always changing things slowly, and you know, it just happens with any guitar. Just trying to improve it every time. So
that's beautiful. Thank you so much. And I think this concludes the series of The Art of Wood. I really appreciate you, Aaron, again. Thank you for being here and for sharing us the great things that you do. Please join us next Monday because we're going to start our new series that is called The Secrets Behind the Strings. And we're going to have great players around the area who have doctorates come and give us a little bit of their secrets. And then we're going to have a workshop on technique that is going to be available for all of you. I am going to be giving the workshop with some help of Mr. Ivan Aguayo, and we're gonna have all of the guitars here and everybody's gonna be playing muted, and we're gonna give some exercises as well as a concert towards the end of February. So keep coming every Monday. We're gonna be here for you. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night, and we're gonna see you next Monday. All right, see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys for joining in. Appreciate it and enjoyed it.